All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, January 8th Berlin Board of Education meeting. It is 6:03. We're going to call this meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we will start out our meeting with our report of student representatives. So we'll turn it over to the two of you.
Good evening, everyone. So to begin, 1 second. All right. So to begin, on January 10th at BHS, Semester 1 capstone seniors will be showcasing their projects starting at 6:15 p.m. This exhibition is open to families, friends, and members of the community. Not only does this showcase all of their hard work over the past 5 months, but it ultimately demonstrates the skills of this year's graduating class.
This year, the BHS Unified Theater Program will be hosting their performance on Thursday, January 26th at 6 p.m. at BHS. Admission is free to everyone, but donations are accepted.
And then, for the first time in the past 4 years, from January 16th to the 19th, students will be completing their midterms and semester 1 finals for the full year and half-year classes. This will round out quarter 2 as we enter the winter-spring semester starting on January 19th.
On December 16th, the BHS mock trial team went to their second ever competition. After being given a mock legal case, they spent months preparing arguments for both the defensive and legal sides of the case, coming up with questions, making connections between evidence, and tearing holes in the opposing counsel's arguments. This work led them to their first victory, placing them in the top 16 teams in the state and carrying them into the preliminary round on February 2nd.
And that's what we have for tonight.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions? Well, thank you for that. Thank you for the update. Moving on to committee reports. So, did the F&O committee meet since the last meeting? No? Okay. And then I know the curriculum committee just met. Who would like to share out on that?
I'm happy to.
Okay.
So we just met with Jean Pike and discussed 3 textbooks that she's recommending. One is for the baking class, for both baking 1 and 2. Portions of it would be used in the first baking 1 and then baking 2. The goal is to add consistency to the students between the teachers, and so that they have the textbook. Both teachers that teach baking can use the same textbook, and also if there's new teachers that come on in, that there's consistency for the students. Upon review of it, it was very thorough. It talked not just about baking, but the science behind it and the things that are necessary. The second book was about nutrition, and it came at it from a very sensible, eating healthy and or making healthy choices for both athletes, regular, everyday living, all sorts of different food choices and things like that. So that too seemed like a book worth endorsing. And then finally, last but not least, was a child development book that looked to expand what they're doing now from basically birth to I think it was a very young age, toddlerdom, to a 12-year-old age, and that too seemed to cover a lot of interesting and pertinent information that we thought was appropriate for a high school class to delve into. So,
Thank you for that report. And the communication committee, you guys haven't met, correct? Monday, okay. Perfect. So at our next meeting, we'll hear how that goes. And there's no CREC report this evening, and correspondence to the board.
I have one correspondence to the board. Your heartfelt gesture of sending beautiful plants during this period of mourning was incredibly touching. Your kindness and support have been a source of strength for our family. Thank you, the Salinas.
I do want to say that today I did in fact receive an email from William Kirshner regarding the pre-K transportation. It only was sent to Brian, Tracy, and myself. However, when I do respond, I just received it today and didn't have the opportunity. I'll be sure to include everyone that's on the board on the response so you guys can see that. But I just wanted to add that as correspondence to the board. And the last thing, I would like to add an item to the agenda, and I will need a motion. I want us to discuss the letter to the town council that was sent out yesterday regarding the Board of Finance letter. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we discuss the letters sent to the Board of Finance and Town Council.
So the motion by Peter, do we have a second? Second by Gina. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 3, 6. Vote is 6-0. So, give me 1 second. And that will just be item C under new business. Give me 1 second. I'm just being secretary until Tracy arrives, so. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So moving on to audience of citizen. If anyone would like to approach the board, now is the time. Just please state your name and address. Okay, no one. So personnel, moving on to a retirement. I will turn this over to the superintendent to discuss the retirement that is in front of us.
Yes, very fortunate to have Dawn Knappel, cook manager Richard D. Hubbard. She worked in the Berlin Public Schools for 40 years in the cafeteria service, so she's been the manager at Hubbard. I know Mr. Suso will miss her greatly. She's done an outstanding job for us. I wish her the best in her retirement.
Do we have a motion for consideration?
I'll move that the board accept the retirement of Dawn Knappel, cook manager at Richard D. Hubbard School, effective January 1st, 2024. Also to thank her for the 40 years of service she has provided to the youth of Berlin, and wish her good health and happiness in her retirement.
Do we have a second? I'll second. So the motion is by Peter, the second is by Melissa. Do we have any discussion? Okay, we can move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The vote carries 6-0. Perfect. Okay, new business. We have a request to name band rooms at Berlin High School and Catherine M. McGee Middle School. So last year, I believe it was, Christine Rose submitted a letter on behalf of registered voters in the town of Berlin requesting that the Board of Education consider naming Berlin High Band Room in honor of Paul Karam and McGee after Ronald Campanaria. Sorry, everyone. Petitions with the signatures of 100 registered voters in accordance with our board policy 1181. Those were submitted, and we had our subcommittee meeting before our last meeting, and that was on December 11th to review the proposals, and the committee's recommendation will be presented. So we moved forward with recommending both rooms. So do you have anything you would like to add?
I knew both gentlemen personally in my time at McGee. Paul Karam I knew in his second venture in the Berlin Public Schools. He was retired, needed a music teacher, and Paul stepped in and did a wonderful job until his health was a concern. Ron Campanaria was at McGee. He also was at Kensington Grammar School. Ron, immeasurable efforts within the district to push music forward. I think both gentlemen have done a commensurate job here in Berlin for the music program, and I know that with the signatures and the comments that were made by people spanning back 20 years, it's very evident that they made a lasting impression here.
So at this time, no action. Do we have a motion for consideration for this? No action needs to be taken, correct?
Well, there's no action, but the committee, so we got to decide as a board, should we decide if we're going to name them or not. But the recommendation from the committee was to, and there were board members on the committee, but.
So I was on the committee. I have no concern with naming them. I think one recommendation that came out of the committee was, maybe if there's a plaque outside, or, outside the door or the room that gives a little brief bio or description of who the person was, because the students now just might see the name and have no meaning. or maybe finding other ways within our community if we have books within our library or something to create like that historical lens of the impact the people who are named, who get their names on rooms or places can be recognized and researched further. So that was a recommendation of the committee, but there was no major concerns brought forward. Anyone want to ask any questions or comments or?
I think it's a wonderful way to remember those teachers. They were around when my kids were going through the system, and they were dedicated, the amount of years, the time they put in. I think it's great. It really is.
I know Adam was on the committee, and the stories he was telling, about having, which one was it that would go around and pick them up for band camp that he was talking about?
I think it was Ron Kemp.
Okay, yeah, and it was just, funny hearing his stories. And, I know Adam was the other board member who sat on because we needed someone from the F&O committee, and he spoke highly of them as well. So anything from Jen or Brian? Anything else to send to the table? So we don't need a motion?
I think we need a motion, but the policy states that we need to have a subcommittee with those representatives on it. So we're bringing back to the board what the subcommittee said at that meeting, and the recommendation is that we would move forward with it from the subcommittee.
Okay,
And if we need to do anything further from that, we can look to do that in the next meeting.
next meeting, but that was just the update. Okay. Anyone else have anything they want to add before we wrap that up? All right, moving on to textbook recommendations for adoption. So I'm going to turn this over to Lori Jerpin and Kara Watson.
Just Lori this
Oh,
evening.
just Lori. I didn't see Kara back there, but I didn't know if she was hiding.
No,
It's fine.
Cara couldn't be this.
That's okay.
So we have, 3 books, for, FCS to be at the high school to be considered for adoption. The 3 books are up front. As mentioned earlier, the first one is, for the baking and pastry 1 and baking and pastry 2 classes. And currently, there's no textbook for those courses. So we're recommending that be adopted moving forward. The next one is food, nutrition, and wellness. And that's for foods and fitness for healthy lifestyle course. And it's replacing a 2006 text. It's outdated and uses content that's no longer in the field. So it still has the present text that we have still has the food pyramid in it, which is no longer used by the USDA. And then the third book is Child Development, Early Stages through Adolescence. It's a 10th edition. The edition that's floating around is the 9th edition. We couldn't get the 10th edition in time. It's for the course, the Developing Child and Child Development. And this book would align with the ECE course moving forward, and it really doesn't have the appropriate depth of knowledge for the course, and it also doesn't align with the ECE course that's offered, the language used in both. So we want to have consistent language when they take child development and when they go on and work in any ECE courses. So those are the 3 books that we have proposed for adoption.
Does anyone have any, well, I guess we need a motion for consideration, then we'll open it up for discussion if you have any questions. Do we have a motion for consideration?
I'll move to adopt the textbooks Child Development, Early Stages Through Adolescence, 10th edition by Celia Anita Decker and published by Goodhart Wilcox Company. Food, Nutrition, and Wellness by Roberta Larson Doif and published by McGraw-Hill Education. On Baking, a textbook of baking and pastry fundamentals, 4th edition by Sarah B. Lebensky, Priscilla A. Martell, and Eddie Van Dam, and published by Pearson 2020.
Do we have a second? Second by Gina? Okay, so motion by Peter, second by Gina. Now we can open it up for discussion. Any discussion, questions, comments? No, nothing? Okay. Okay, we can move to a vote then. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, the vote carries 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And the item we just added under new business, letter to the Board of Finance and Town Council. So, I think it's just important to talk about this here, so everyone is in the loop. And it gives the board the opportunity to ask questions if necessary. So I'm just referencing my email. So back on August 23rd, 2023, I received an email from Sal Bordenaro, the chair of the Board of Finance, and it was, you know, it talked about, as we enter the second month of the fiscal year 24 budget year, please provide responses to questions below within 30 calendar days by September 22nd of this letter. The approved fiscal year 24 operating budget of 50 million, the way it's written, it's 50,855,000. 3.6% increase from fiscal year 23 budget is 1,094,000 less than the Board of Ed's proposed budget of 51,949,000, 5.8% increase from fiscal year 23. Please identify specific positions or non-labor expense accounts that were reduced that make up the budget differential. I'm just skipping out some of the numbers because how they were written. It's in your email though. Provide detail on specific position cuts with associated expenses, including fringes or specific non-labor expenses account cut and associated amount. Of the positions cut, specify if they were existing employees or open job positions which were eliminated. Of the budget differential, specify if grant or reserve funds were used to cover some of those requirements. Specify in detail where the funds came from and the specific expense accounts they were allocated to. The Berlin Board of Ed website has over 20 job postings as identified below. Please identify those jobs that are new, were not in the fiscal year 23 operational budget, or replacements for employees who retired or left. And then it listed all the job openings, but again, this was beginning of this was August 23rd, so we were still hiring. It said Dean of Students, Willard, secondary special ed, supervisor, on-call substitute kitchen cafeteria worker, cook manager, grade 4, anticipated 1-year position, short-term sub-math teacher, job openings continued, and it just has a number of them, and then it says, please describe the role of the Dean of Students at Willard School. It is an added position. If no, what position is being replaced? If there are any questions regarding this, feel free to contact me. Sincerely, Sal Bordenaro. So I know you guys were all on my response back, back on, I believe it was September 5th. And I included the Board of Ed and the entire Board of Finance. The Board of Finance did have a meeting about it. I'm just going to read it just to enter it onto the record, because this has now been added to the Town Council meeting for tomorrow night. So I think just for sake of transparency, we are now having the discussion here rather than emails, you know, without it being public facing. So hello, Sally. I hope this email finds you well. I've CC'd the members of the Board of Education and the Board of Finance on this response, as well as those CC'd on the initial email. I believe you received the information request regarding the Board of Education fiscal year 2023 financial summary and grant summary page. I've attached a copy of the letter you included in your previous email to this email for reference, and my response below to address the requested information from the letter. I received your August 23rd email with the attached letter posing a series of questions concerning the Board of Education's operating budget current job vacancies within the district, and the dean of student position at Willard Elementary School. In your letter, you stated that I would need to provide responses to your questions within 30 calendar days, 9/22/23 of the request. I've graciously answered all previous Board of Finance requests as I've strived to build a working relationship between the Board of Education and the Board of Finance, improve dialogue, and establish a level of transparency. As the president of the Board of Education, I report to the Board of Education and not the Board of Finance, though I've always gone above and beyond to provide you with any information to fulfill your request. I am not obligated to do so. In an effort to work collectively for the betterment of our town, it is imperative that we not only understand the different roles of each board, which is outlined in the Connecticut General Statute, but also maintain a level of professional boundaries within the specific duties of our position. While the Board of Finance has important responsibilities in the budget development process, Connecticut law makes clear that once funds are appropriated to the Board of Education, the Board of Education has the discretion to determine how those funds should be expended. Section 10-222 of the Connecticut General Statute specifically states that the money appropriated by any municipality for the maintenance of public schools shall be expended by and in discretion of the Board of Education. Therefore, the Board of Finance has no authority to dictate how the Board of Education expends its appropriation. The Board of Education and the Board of Finance are separate entities, and legal separation exists between town management resources and the management of school resources. The duties of a Board of Education are outlined in Section 10-220 of Connecticut General Statute to best serve the interests of the school district with state oversight. Chapter 170 states that local school boards of education are not agents of the town but creatures of the state. And Section 10-240 of Chapter 171, Town Management, states that each town shall, through its Board of Education, maintain control of all public schools within its limits, and for this purpose shall be a school district and shall have all powers and duties of school districts, except so far as such powers and duties are inconsistent with the provisions of this chapter. The Board of Education's responsibility is to serve the interests of the district, and by doing so, we make a commitment to the children that attend Berlin Public Schools, the parents that trust us, and those that voted for us. Though we serve on separate boards, a level of professionalism and mutual respect for our respective boards is of utmost importance in order to fulfill the specific obligations and the roles we occupy. The questions posed in your August 23rd letter delve into educational operational matters that are not within the province of the Board of Finance. While the Board of Education will continue to engage in communication with the Board of Finance, it is clear from your letter that there is either a misunderstanding associated with legal separation or a lack of respect. The Board of Education has always worked in a professional and cordial manner to address the requests and various questions posed by the Board of Finance. Even though the professionalism and cordial demeanor exhibited by the Board of Ed is not always reciprocated by members of the Board of Finance, thus the Board of Education is not required to fulfill your request, though many attempts have demonstrated the Board of Education's effort to communicate effectively and in the spirit of transparency. I have made countless attempts to provide you with information you've requested, yet you have continued to exhibit disrespectful behavior toward myself, the board, and the established protocols around communication. Your requests oftentimes go around me and directly to Ashley Dorsey when it's been stated and restated that your requests need to come to me directly. I have willingly met you in an attempt to plan strategically for the upcoming budget seasons and discuss the long-term fiscal needs of the board, yet it appears that the good faith efforts of the Board of Education have created role confusion for the Board of Finance. To reiterate, the Board of Finance has no authority to dictate how the Board of Ed utilizes the money. Further, the Board of Finance legally has no supervisory authority over the Board of Education. We have welcomed all of your questions, and we have gone above and beyond to answer all questions. It appears that the efforts that have been made on behalf of the Board of Education to open the channels of communication have not satisfied the requests, and the Board of Education continues to receive criticism from the Board of Finance. The Board of Education does not intend to engage in back and forth over the matter in your August 23rd letter, which go well beyond the authority of the Board of Finance. Sincerely, Julia Dennis. So the Board of Finance already discussed this. There wasn't really an outcome. And then yesterday, since it was brought to my attention that the town council will be discussing this, I went ahead and just sent a response to an email to the town council forwarding the past 2 emails. I've included the Board of Ed on it, as well as all town councilors, just, to reiterate that lengthy email I read, and then provide the board the opportunity to ask questions if they have any, so it is in fact on public record, because I think in the sake of transparency, it just needs to be entered into public record, especially if the town council is going to be engaging in a dialogue around this. So thank you for bearing with me as I read those very long emails, but I think it just needed to be done for the sake of transparency and the opportunity for dialogue. So anyone have anything they would like to add? Peter?
I'll add something. I just I think your letter really covers most of the message, but I just hope moving forward through this budget season that it can be a little bit more respectful and friendly rather than hostile. And I think that.
Can you just talk a little louder?
Yeah, sorry. And I think that with the inclusion of that agenda item on the town council and the previous engagement between Sal and yourself, it doesn't set a great kickoff to our budget season, seeing as it seems that certain individuals want to start our budget season on the wrong foot and from a point of accusation or suspicion rather than working together for the betterment of the town residents and our school system. So I just hope that people can be respectful with one another and just work together instead of making this into a political battle, so to speak.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I agree with Peter. I also feel that there's probably a lot of confusion where the budget is concerned. I'm not saying that Sal doesn't understand it, but I think that there's a lot of nuances if you're not doing it or in it, and you haven't done it many times, that you don't really fully understand. So I'd like to think that there's a way without having, as Peter said, the sort of the animosity with the Board of Finance, thinking that there's something that the Board of Education is hiding. I really, that's really disheartening to me. As a community, I think that we are all living in the same community, striving for the same things for our kids, for our families. I mean, I think we just have to put our differences aside. I know it sounds so sappy, and just go to the table and work it out. I mean, I really believe it can be done. I just think it has to be done under the right situation. I'm not sure what that is, because I think there's all good people that want good things for the town and for the kids. But there's, when there's suspicion that's going on, they may think that it's right that they're suspicious, but until it's clarified in a way that they fully understand it, then it's never really going to change. That I think that suspicion is going to continue to be there, and it's always going to fester every budget season. And it's not good for us. It's not good for the town. When we hear, when the parents come and they're all up in arms, thinking that we're trying to take something away, and you don't even know how to handle yourself at the end of the day because you're so afraid you're going to offend people, which is not the good way to be. So I think there's a way out. I just haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, I think the first step is starting by clarifying the roles that exist that are outlined in the Connecticut General Statute. I will say that, Brian has offered many times for any member of the Board of Finance to come in, sit down with Ashley, look at the books. We have had multiple meetings last year. We had a meeting at the start of budget season trying to come together. But when I do get an email saying that I have 30 days to respond, as if it's a demand, an ultimatum, I have to answer to, it's not that we're withholding information or even want to. Actually, all the questions that were asked were actually discussed at the previous board meeting. So I think we had met the week before, and every question that he had asked was on that meeting. But it wasn't a matter of withholding the information, but it was more of we need to show a level of mutual respect amongst the boards based on Connecticut law. and I think that's the starting point, but I would agree. I think it's critical that we work together and get along, because, you know, we sit here because we are elected by the people in our town to do what's right and best for the kids. But we also have Connecticut General Statute that's gonna guide our work. But anyone else have anything they wanna say?
Well, just, you know, I think reiterating the roles and responsibilities is really important, as you did. And I think that hopefully will force a little more mutual respect. And I did not see that in the last year. So I'm hopeful that, that Billy will look at that in a more detailed way and understand what their role is versus our role.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Ian and Anusha, you have anything you wanna share on that? No. Okay. Perfect. All right, so I just thought it was important, since the town council will be going into discussion around this, that we did put it out there, and it is just on the record, and it's clear. So there isn't any confusion, or nothing is being misconstrued. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Not at this time. I just hope that it's a productive process, not one where it's contentious along the way from all parties, so.
Thanks. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna turn it over to the superintendent, because tonight we have the superintendent's proposed budget presentation. So we are gonna go through each item,
Do you want me to present from here? Or do you want me to
however
do
you
it?
want, whatever you're most
This I'll
comfortable.
face-
It
this
is
I'll
a
face the public-
long,
This I'll face the public, so.
long night, so.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present the budget. As you have in front of you, you have a budget presentation. You also have a prepared copy of the budget. Both of those will be put on the website for review. Hopefully that the budget packet that you have, that's in the 3-ring binder, that has all the numbers and more of the representation. I'm gonna go through more of an overview and kind of give you some context to what this budget represents and what it means to the school district. So if you go to the first slide. What are the goals for this budget? Well, any budget, behind the numbers are what are we trying to accomplish? And first and foremost, provide the quality education that this community has come to expect. Prepare students for multiple options and opportunities. What I mean by that is that upon graduation, students should have ample opportunities and options regardless of if going on to a 4-year school, 2-year school, right into the career workforce, into technical skills. They should be able to have multiple options and opportunities, and we should be preparing them for all of those. Maintain favorable class sizes and course offerings, knowing that if, you know, people have an expectation in the primary grades of what we've held for a number of years, as well as offering the courses at the high school. The last few years, we've reduced staff, which means reducing staff, means reducing courses. Consistent support of technology, as I said numerous times, we have very strong technology in the district. Without continual funding, replacement of items such as laptops, Chromebooks, devices in the classroom, we will no longer be able to be competitive with technology, as well as staff members, IT staff, as well as tech integration staff. And the last, a commitment to safe learning environment. Obviously, we want our students and staff to feel safe every day in a environment that's clean, an environment that's safe, an environment that's welcoming. So the 5 goals that I present to you are the goals that hopefully this budget represents. A little bit about our mission statement and our core values. We empower our students to be enthusiastic, curious learners, and kind, compassionate leaders in our community and the world. Continuing to do that does require funding and continual funding. Our tagline of core values of purpose, passion, and pride. Understand our goals and why our effort matters. We inspire passion for learning and foster meaning for caring relationships, meaning we're doing it in a way that's not just putting information out to students. We're trying to do it in a way where they understand being a good person, doing it in a way that's meaning, doing it in a way that matters. We act in a way that cultivates the pride. Over and over we said how much pride we have in the district. We want our students to continue that pride, have pride in themselves, have pride in the schools, and pride in the community they represent. Beliefs about learning, and this really focuses on what does it mean for the students. All students will learn when they feel safe, included, respected, and valued in the community. We must believe in the challenge, support all students and reach their potential goals and our high expectations. And that's not meaning all students, meaning students that have special education needs, as well as our top students, as well as our students that are going into the career force, we have to have ample educational opportunities and options. Number 3, learning is enhanced by a cycle that includes goal setting, practice, feedback, and reflection. Meaning that it's not expected that we're just giving information to students, but we're doing it in a manner where students actually become enculturated into it, they practice it, they receive feedback, and they grow as learners. And that's through the K-12 curriculum. The students are empowered to engage by choice and authentic learning experiences. You know, some of the pieces from last year's budget, hiring Millie, and at the high school and moving to the career education piece is just doing that, offering those authentic learning experiences of internships and things that are currently taking place. Berlin Vision of a Graduate, we don't have our new logo, which will be released shortly, but our Vision of a Graduate, now the Vision of a Graduate does not mean that all of a sudden you graduate and here you are. It's what we do K-12 to build these skill sets that you see, to be able to communicate effectively, to collaborate, to learn continuously, to think, to innovate, solve problems, contribute to local and global communities. So these threads are woven through the K-12 curriculum, and some of this that you see in the capstone projects and what our students can do when they do graduate in their senior year. But along the way, we have checkpoints and various learning experiences. As in 8th grade, we have the, thinking of the program, Quest program, the Quest program, and in 5th grade, some of the, at the board you saw last year, some of the videos that were produced at the elementary level that you could have thought that a high school or a college student did. So those pieces are woven throughout the whole curriculum and the funding that's necessary to do that. At a glance, looking at our entire budget, you know, when you look at the entire budget here, 80% of it is staffing, including benefits. Education is a people business. It takes people to educate others, and it's not just technology or students sitting in front of a screen. So in doing so, 80% is staffing. The contracted services and utilities, that 5%, we'll go over that a little further, but the contracted services, utilities, there's not much adjustment. We know what utilities are costing us in our homes, and there's similar increases here despite our best negotiations. Transportation we'll go over further also, and tuition. Some of the tuition by state statute, students have a right to various educations. Others it's under IDEA and special education. We have outplacements that we're required to pay for that. And then the last one, the 3.51%, you could say, well, do you need supplies and do you need others? Well, we definitely need supplies in the school. We saw what happened earlier when, you know, we put out that asked parents to donate things. The question was, aren't we paying taxes for those items, and shouldn't it be required? So the supplies, equipment, others at almost $2 million there, that piece making up the total pie. But I just want this graph to show you it's really 80% is staffing. Superintendent's proposed view, looking at the stacked bar graph. I think this is a great presentation of seeing the budget. The requested budget this year is $54,105,900. $54,105,092. So looking at the bar graph, you can see on the lower portion, tuition's decreased. It's decreased because students are opting we're not having as many outplacements. Students are not opting for other programs or opting to stay in district. Typically, we don't have that lower band of a decrease, but we do anticipate that for next year. The next bar, the blue bar, is our staffing contractual obligations at 4.21%. That includes any new staff that are being added, which I will share with you briefly. And then you can see above the three higher bands, you'll see the contractual services, the transportation utilities, and then you go into supplies and equipment, and that's at 2.18%. And when we talk about the new staff, I apologize, going back, the blue portion is if we continued with just the staff that we have in place this year into next year, we'd be at 4.21%. That 0.35% is the new staff, which I'll talk about momentarily. It's the gray bar on the top, if we added that on to the operational budget. And you can see where the average budget increase, that black line that goes across the blue, that 3.14%, that's our 5-year average. It didn't put the bar where last year's was. I think it's more representative to see a 5-year average.
Looking at special education versus the entire budget, special education roughly is, as you see here, 25% of the entire budget. And for those of you that may be new to the board, those IDA requirements and things are mandated. We don't have the option of decreasing programming and things. It's legally, we're required to do that, such as summer school, such as paraprofessionals for students, such as specialized education. So, what's changing in staffing? This year we took a different approach to the budget. Last year, went into the budget and at your request, I asked to hold all staffing requests. This year, we did not. What is needed to move the district forward and to keep the district moving forward. So I want to go over to the far right, the green first. This current fiscal year, the 23-24 year, we added a certified math teacher at the high school. We have a math teacher that's currently on medical leave. We needed a teacher. Trying to find a math teacher right now in these conditions is very difficult. And we also reduced a math teacher the previous year or the year before that. The need to have that math teacher now for the teacher that's out, but the need for that math teacher to continue beyond this year is definitely there at the high school, so that we hired a math teacher at the high school. Certified special education teacher, our BLAST program at Willard, those are some of our most significant learners. Most of the students have a paraprofessional one-to-one with them. We exceeded 20 students. We had 2 classrooms. It was at a point where we no longer could have students in the classrooms, so we hired a new teacher. Very fortunate to find a teacher with that skill set, and we actually took another classroom and turned it into a third BLAST classroom to accommodate that student population. If we could not accommodate those students within those BLAST classrooms, we would be outplacing those students to find specialized instruction for them. IT technician, we talked about it last year and the year before. The camera systems that we have in the district, which we have extensive cameras at all buildings, those were initially, especially at the high school, were a third party that we'd have to hire specific to them. We are now servicing all of the cameras and things in-house. For the most part, we're not locked into an outside technician. We also needed the IT staff to also work just with the number of devices that we have in the district is far less than what the business world requires for IT staff. We're probably 3 times below, or maybe even close to 4, what's recommended based on number of devices. Obviously, some are student devices, but the need for the IT technician was there. The office assistant, we reduced the office assistant at the high school. That's a part-time position. We just could not manage at the high school. We also have a paraprofessional at the high school that is on leave. That was necessary just for the office to function. So those positions were added in this current year, and they are in the budget moving forward for the following years to come. So what's new for this year? The next 2 columns, even though one is yellow and one is red, those are both new positions that we're requesting for this upcoming year. Some of them are already currently here, but they're added into the operational budget because our ESSER funds are no longer available. I'm looking at the yellow right now. Certified reading specialist, certified math specialist, and family communication specialist. All of those were paid for out of ESSER funds. Those funds have been expended. There's no funds left to be used for that, so we're putting those into the operational budget. And the last piece there, that 177,920, when I go back in a moment to the stacked bar graph, that's that gray line on top. It's the certified science teacher. We also cut science staff at the high school in order to maintain the number of courses offered and class size. The classroom at the high school, even if we wanted to increase the size, the classrooms are very limited at the high school, meaning that the class sizes are not large enough to accommodate some of the students, as well as offer the number of courses that are needed. The elementary teacher that we're holding, we just don't know whether it will be Griswold, Willard, or Hubbard. We're holding one position. We're concerned about the K or the first grade level, even with the roll up from K to first. The likelihood that we could need another teacher is there, so we're holding one position there, as we've done in years past. Let me just go back to the stack. That 177 in the green, the +2. I'll go back here. See up top, the 177, that's the gray bar up top. That's the 2. So when you're looking at that, that's just the pink. The others are already in the operational, which is the lower blue. This is the superintendent's budget executive summary. This, for those that are new to the board, outlining the budget in this format is something that the board asked for probably 6 years ago upon myself becoming superintendent. These are all tied back to fact sheets here that will give you a little information so you can quickly go back and code. It became difficult for people to be able to go back and forth through the actual documents that we use in budget sense to go back and forth. So we look to do it in a manner where it's color-coded and you can see each one. I will go through each line, but this gives you the quick overview. Then you'll have the backup sheet Y, and I'll try to explain each. So first is the administrative salary line. It's an increase of 3.68. It does not mean each administrator gets a 3.68 salary increase. It also takes into account steps. Administrators have 5 steps, so some are stepping and some aren't. So the affiliated contract increase is 2.25 to 4.6 with step. So it depends on whether administrator is stepping or not. Non-affiliated administrators are budgeted at 3.0. And increased FTE, this came up, question about was earlier this evening. Increased FTE is recategorization of the lead teacher to the dean of students. We spoke about this because the lead teacher was in the teachers union and doing administrative work. The BEA felt strongly that they should be in the administrative group, so they were moved out of the teacher union and into the administrative union. So you will see that the administrative number went up by 3 because we had a lead teacher at Griswold, Willard, and McGee. So now you have 3 additional administrators, and you'll have a decrease of 3 teachers. Certified staff. This gives you a quick breakdown. 160 general funded teachers positions are at max step. 105 general funded teachers are advanced a step for the 24-25 school year. Advancing a step means that there's a budgetary, typically advancing a step, you're moving $3,000 to $4,000 from that step. So it just gives you a breakdown of some of the movement. What includes here in the certified staff, we have 1 math teacher, 1 blast teacher. I already spoke about those that are added this year. We have a reading and math specialist, previously funded by the ESSER. I spoke about that. Additional science teacher, originally cut. We need that position to fill the number of course offers that we have in class size. Department supervisor for library and media technology. We currently have department supervisors for our language program, 612. We have it for math, science, English, and social studies. Adding one for library, media, and technology integration is appropriate and needed. I just want to remind the board that we also cut an assistant superintendent. So the 2 curriculum people we currently had are now doing a lot of the work that the assistant superintendent did, and having these 612 coordinators, 12 directors, supervisors, it allows us to have greater articulation, 612, and someone to have greater oversight. And it's an excellent model. It's a model that I supported before losing the assistant superintendent, but it's even more necessary now. And then the last piece is anticipated salary lane changes, which I was speaking of, about not just advancing a step from 3 to 4, but also the salary lane changes from bachelor's to a master's to a 6th year to potentially a doctorate. Comparison of staff here, you'll see that our FTE for 23-24 was 265.3, and that I talked to you already about the positions that will be added for next year, potential positions. But I think just historically, to go back, we have made reductions, but there's at a point when we'll also talk about what's needed by the population. And the projected population for last year and what the top population actually was roughly 40 students increased. So as much as our Prada report or NEASC report predicts the population, we had 40 additional students above the prediction this current year. Non-certified salaries, 5.10%. Rate increases for affiliated staff are determined by contract. They're not receiving 5.1%. Typically, they're in the upper 2s. Non-affiliated staff contracts are budgeted at 3%. Includes increases to per diem sub-account. We do not control the days teachers contractually have days they can take off, whether it's personal or sick. And our sub-account has oftentimes been depleted. We also had to increase the sub rate from $90 or $95 to $125. That's comparison to many of the districts around us. We weren't getting subs to apply despite all kinds of incentives to have subs come in. Custodial overtime, when we have custodians out, I think we do a good job of managing things for a few days, but if they're going to be out for extended time, we have to cover the buildings, and ensure that they're clean, and whatever needs to get done is getting done. Increased hours for EL tutors. Our EL population, English language learners, is at its highest point that it's been in over 10 years. So rather than hiring new staff, we are giving additional hours to that. We need to know that we did redo our pay structure for the tutors years ago, but the need of the students for EL is definitely increased. Additionally, IT staff, I spoke to you about that already. A family communication specialist, this person helps Nick with all of the things that we're doing, including broadcasting here, students working in the radio station, students producing video content, and additional seasons for Unified Sports Program. Our Unified Sport Program has been recognized several times. Unified Sports has special education students paired with regular education students, and they give students an opportunity to participate in various sports against other schools across the state. So there needed to be some additional funding for that. Employee benefits. The town sets our rate increase for medical insurance at 10%. We've been fortunate in years past to go as low as 5%. We're being told by our insurance broker that the best we'll get is 8.5 this year. So there could be a little reduction as there is in the past. This sometimes does not happen until May or even June to see that reduction, but it's not going to be a huge amount. But that's 10% is what we're being told to budget for. Rate increase for dental is 0 this year. The employer percentage for staff group has been adjusted to meet the contractual obligation for each group, and that's just what the percentage that we in contractual negotiations we adjust the percentage that each group is paying, and this increase includes new staff benefits. So the new staff that were proposed here and the ones that were brought on this year, it's included in the 6.53% increase. Contracted services. This number is larger than we'd like to see, but I think there's definitely more to this. Our contractual services include services for PPS. So any of our testing services, any outside specialists that we use are all contracted services. Our legal fees, with Shipman and Goodwin, are included. Transportation for athletics. Operational educational systems. I want to spend a little time on the last one, operational educational system. What we try to do when we have the funding is to purchase multiple year contracts. And you might ask, why would you purchase multiple year contracts? The reason to purchase multiple year contracts is oftentimes we can get a 5% to a 10% decrease in the annual fee. So if we know like Power School, the odds of us deviating from Power School as a district are very, very low, as almost every district in the state uses it. So if we can purchase a 3-year contract and save $20,000, we purchase the contract. So when you see this number, this year it's 11.87 because we have a lot of those multi-year contracts expiring, and we need to re-up them. So if we can only get 1 year, because that's what the budget says, that's what we do, but it's really a loss of money to certain things. If it's an operation system that we may not use, we obviously would never get into a multi-year contract with. But there are things like Atlas Rubicon, Talent Ed, which we use to monitor all of our staff, Power School, those things, or educational resources within the classroom that we know teachers use continually. So that's why the increase is a little larger. Most professional services increase at 3 to 7% annually. Included in this number is ESS at the high school. So oftentimes at ESS, we were one of the second districts in the state. We just had our meeting last week. They work with us in a very positive way with the funding. If we sign up early, they give us free summer school support and a multi-year discount if you do multiple years. But this includes the Berlin High School ESS. It does not include McGee, and I'll talk about that later. It also includes professional development for our staff. And we talked the other night at the retreat about what helps to have teachers come to the Berlin Public Schools. Our professional development has always been top-notch. We bring in some of the real high-quality individuals to work with us, which definitely has a greater impact on the district. So professional development funding is here. Utilities, I think we all see it in our homes, a 5.58% for utilities. We do not have electric here because the town is with the electric's with the town, and they negotiate electric rates, but we do have natural gas, water, and sewer. I think that it's 5.58. I think we all feel that at least that at home also. Berlin and Cromwell split the CCTA program, so they each pay half of it. So, Transportation at 2.8, and you might say, how is that possible when you have a 3% increase in the contract with NBT, and that's a multi-year contract? Cost of fuel is negotiated annually, and the price per gallon for both diesel and gasoline are expected to increase. So that's been added as a factor here. Includes increased vehicle repair maintenance, as we said numerous times. The vans, all of the vans that we own are owned by the town, owned by the board, and all the repairs we pay for. We pay for the repairs to be done. So as the vehicles get older, there's additional repairs to be done. Special education transportation is budgeted net excess cost. We receive excess cost for our special education population. If for those students that exceed by a certain rate, that number can vary year to year what the state reimburses us. But so we take that and we subtract the excess cost, and that's how we come. The excess cost offsets it first, and then that's the number that we use for transportation. Tuition, we have a decrease. As I said, you saw that in the first stacked bar graph. Anticipated 3% increase for all special education outplacements. That's normal, annual increase for those students at the specialized programs. Special education tuition budgeted net excess cost. So again, we take the tuition, we get reimbursement, we subtract that, and that's what we're budgeting for, our anticipated excess cost. Includes unanticipated special education placements for 24-25 school year. We have 2 placements that are unanticipated. That could be special education outplacements. Of that amount is $200,000 that we have in the budget for those outplacements. Tuition costs for career pathways, independent study. As I spoke to you about earlier about career pathways with Millie at the high school, the program that we brought in last year. Those students are beginning to get outside of the district and independent studies and working with internships and things. And there's additional costs for transportation and some of these programs. And then the adjustment of the House Bill 6941, VOAG and magnet institutions. There's a new bill. Conservatively budgeted them at 80%, expecting that this bill will hold at the state level. But that's where you get the decrease in tuition, which is not typical that we have a decrease in tuition. So that's a positive. We're almost there. Supplies, textbooks, and materials. You saw some of the textbook this evening. Rising cost of inflation and building principles. I stress this to you because the last 4 years, our buildings, our supply accounts have been held at 0 for 4 years. That being said, I think we all recognize that the cost of paper, the cost of toilet paper, the cost of any supply when we go to the store is more than it has been in years. So we really feel that this time we need to have more funding in supplies. And especially at McGee, I'm going to highlight McGee for a moment. McGee's per pupil expenditure was less than some of our elementary schools, and that's not typically how things should be. So there's been some adjustment at each level. We didn't just add them on. They made adjustments. That's the second bullet there to look and see where they needed. Includes textbooks, decodable text, FCS supplies, K-3 literacy supplies, world language. And then the last piece is, I think our buildings are kept in really good shape for the age they are, and the custodial supplies needed to maintain the buildings, those have all increased also. So we had to have an increase in the custodial supplies with wax and cleaning materials and so on. So that's where the increase here of 25.23% comes. Equipment, this goes to, have never had, and this is something that's stressed, and it's been stressed to the Board of Finance too, we've never had a replacement cycle for technology in Berlin, yet we have strong technology. And the reason why is the equipment that we have, not only in the budget, but if you look at the end of the year funds that are often spoke of, or how we spend those end of the year funds, typically they're spent on technology. It's because we don't have that replacement cycle. We do have a cycle of knowing what's needed when, and that's where this number is derived from based on the age of the devices that teachers have, students have, and even the projectors like we're using this evening in the classroom. So one-to-one, iPads, Chromebooks, district technology, laptops, PCs. That's what really makes up this increase here, and that number again changes year to year based on the number of devices that are needed. All other expenditures, 57,000, increase of 80%. Last year, we paid end of the year funds for CABE. It was a discussion. This year, it's in the budget. Includes increases for BHS graduation Last year we used student accountabilities, had a considerable amount of funding in it, so we used that this year. It will be added into the budget. Those are some of the drivers. Without again, so graduation is roughly $25,000 that it cost, and we know what CAVE cost, so that's the major drivers of this increase here. This is a slide that's often asked for. I won't go into it. You can see that our numbers have either held, other than the administrators, which I've talked to you already, so you have an understanding. That is your lead teachers moving into dean of students. And you can see what the numbers were year to year and what they were for the 23-24 and what they would be with the new staff added. And most of the numbers are holding steady at where they are, despite, as I said, our student population, I think, is based on the projection, is supposed to decrease 8 students for next year. So you can see the only change.
Is it still supposed to decrease with the new housing
Well-
complexes coming into town, or?
The Prada report and NEA is supposedly taken to count those new housing projects, but in my letter in your budget and to the public, I did note that we are concerned about the new housing and what it could do, based on this year also having, I think, 41 more students than what was projected. So this slide here, I think, is very interesting, and it should be noted about the open choice program. Despite for a number of years, you can see the red line is the funding that we receive as reimbursement from choice. The 900,000 that went across there, that was when we had 4% of our students choice. We still have opted to attempt to have 4% of our student population be from choice, but we have not been able to reach that the last 2 years, and it's unlikely that we budgeted at 3%. It's unlikely we'll do that for the 24-25 school year. So we're assuming it's a 3%, which is going to be a decrease in funding. You can see it's almost $200,000 decrease in funding based on the number of choice students we have in the district. We believe strongly that taking students at the kindergarten level or first grade level and then having them move through the district is the right model. The students assimilate into the district. They seem to be very successful and well acclimated. If we opened it up and took students across the board, like we did years ago, there were concerns about that. So that might be a way of additional funding being there, but I don't think it's the best model on how students will be most successful, and so on. So this just gives you an idea. We're losing 200,000 based on number of students that are attending. Open choice anticipated budget. It's often thought that this is just extra money that's only used for choice students. It's not. It's used for all students, and so we pay, almost $500,000 of it. $460,000 is used for certified staff that work with all students, Berlin students and students of choice. And then non-certified staff are paraprofessionals and other specialists, another $375,000. And then ESS at McGee, we're slated to pay that out of the choice fund. It doesn't mean that any choice students may access the service, but we're going to pay for it out of that. And then we have $147,000 for other expenditures, which we're able to use. Choice fund, there's great flexibility in what that can be used for. Typically, we hold a lot of that for outside placements, or if there was a specialized need that we would need there. So, budget funding history. This just gives you a little look back to what was requested. So the bar at the top tells you what was requested by the superintendent over the years, and then what the actual funding was over the years. And that's where that 3.14% is. That's that 5-year average of the funding that we've received those last years. I know it's often said that, by the Board of Finance, what does this chart mean? Why do you even bother with it? Because I think it's important that you look at to see what other towns are receiving for increases and what Berlin's receiving. Because there's part of it when you're talking about contractual obligations with teachers, which are the largest group, and paraprofessionals, when binding arbitrations and set for these various groups, where you're limited to what you can negotiate and what's there. So every district is struggling with the same people and the same unions and the same factors. So, but I think the 5-year average is great to look at, and we're right in the middle. These are not towns in our DERG. These are towns that typically Berlin is compared to. Rocky Hill is in our DERG, but Weathers Farmington, Weathersfield, Glastonbury, to see what the actual numbers have been and the budgets. This chart, if you look at the green bar, that gives you the average. So if you're looking at the green bar, that tells you what the average is in our DERG. Our DERG is our economic reference group. It's based on wealth ranking, and it's based on income and based on similar social economics. The state no longer uses the DERG, but it's still used by the newspapers and across from others to make comparisons. So if you're looking at the green bar, that gives you that gives you the average of 4.35. The average budget increase in '24 was 4.35 for this DERG. Our budget increase was 3.61, but it also shows you where we fall as compared to other towns and what they increased. So this here, they talk about our per pupil expenditure within our DERG. So you might say the last one said, what was the increase? Well, those towns need an increase because our per pupil is greater. So you can see that we're, I think it's 6, 7, 8, ninth from the top, as far as where our per pupil is at 20,671. That green line is the state average, which takes into account all DERGs, but you can see where we are to similar towns. And I want to draw attention to something. If you look at the towns that are above us, if you can remember some of the names, when I get to the next slide, you'll see there's might be a correlation to the funding and something else that I don't know. So this is a preview of the student achievement report that you'll have at the next board meeting. So we take this is a composite of SBAC scores, grade 3 through 8. If you look where Berlin is 4th for ELA, and also 4th for math as compared to the rest of the towns in our DERG. Oftentimes there's comments that, you know, this is one measure of academic achievement, but is the one measure you can compare to other towns. And oftentimes people like to compare and say, well, we're funding at this, and how is Berlin doing? So I think this is a great snapshot of, you know, the success that we've had this year. Doesn't mean next year will be as successful, but if you look at those towns and the funding of those towns, and if I go back to the next slide, you look where Old Saybrook is the top for funding, Rocky Hill is below us, so there's some, you know, you could draw some correlation or not to the funding be representative to the achievement. But I wanted to share that a little more about another preview. This is our 11th grade NGSS. We're second only to Stonington in achievement NGSS. If I had 8th and 5th grade, they're not as high, but I think, you know, where we end up in 11th grade is excellent. And the last slide is our SATs. I think we're 8th and 9th within our DERG for math and reading and writing for the SATs this past year. Just a little bit when you're talking about, you know, how is the district doing, and the report that Lori and Cara will present to you will be much more detailed. State funding, you can see the decrease, but that decrease really there is, you know, the decrease that we're having of the state funding has to do a lot with choice. I mean, a lot with the ESSER accounts for the year, so you can see it's going down. Our state funding, just a quick graph. Our federal funding is also going down. It popped back up a little. It varies. It's more limited. This is in there for people to reference. This just gives you class sizes of what the class sizes would be based on the number of teachers that we're requesting. As I said earlier, we do like the primary classrooms to be smaller, and they have been predominantly over the years. And McGee and the high school, you can see that by class.
Well done.
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nice job. Who has questions? Comments?
Just before I finish, there's two things.
Yeah.
There's a couple other just appendices. If you look at the mill rate, just to have people to know what the mill rate is in Berlin as compared to the other towns that we had. That was asked for years ago. And the last is the wealth ranking and our ranking. So this I show, this is often brought up. Our wealth ranking for 23-24 was 59th out of 169 towns, I believe. And our NCP, what we spend as compared to that 20,671 was 84th. What I would like to say in a brief statement about that is having a wealth ranking of 59th, spending 84th, some might say, well, geez, that's not, you could pay more, and that's something that's brought up as you can pay more than you're spending. But I think what we're doing with what we're getting based on the achievement is a positive. And so I think I just want to draw your attention to that. And then some recognitions that have happened over the years. And we had two schools, Hubbard and the high school this year was just recognized by US News Report ranking and is able to hang that banner based on the achievement at those schools. You know, National Honor Society, there's various recognitions that are received throughout the school district for the work that's being done. And I just think it's good to have that one. So now I am officially done. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you guys have any questions for Brian?
I have a question for clarification.
Sure.
Just because I'm thinking about our end of the year fund, so I just want clarification. For under transportation, you said it includes the increase of the vehicle repairs. And I know the vans are owned by the town, but is that different than what's covered under the capital funding?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
So it's not, Ashley could speak to it more, but
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I just remember us talking about needing more vans, but that was talking about the capital funding.
Capital is over, capital's over 10,000.
Okay.
So this would be repair, so if the vehicle needed a alternator, needed brakes.
Okay,
that's
yeah,
what we
yeah,
have to-
okay, thank you.
Here are your minutes. I can help you with it though. Does anyone else have any other questions? Yes.
The things that we had under the ESSER funds that we no longer have the funding for ESSER.
Yep, let me go back.
What did we do before we had the ESSER funds? With those particular
Well,
areas, I can't find them on my sheet right now.
What we did, which last year when those were put in, we were told by others, we didn't want to have many districts put tons of positions using ESSER funds, then they hit a cliff, like a huge cliff. Like this would be considered a small cliff as compared to other districts. But we were told when the budget didn't pass, use the ESSER funds. This is how we decided to balance the budget and keep those positions, because the budget increase wasn't enough to keep those positions.
So we sort of reallocated money in order to not have to.
Exactly.
eliminate those positions.
Exactly.
Okay.
Where some districts maybe, our size said, well, let's hire these, we got these funds, we'll pay 10 teachers. Well, now the funds are gone, so now you got,
Right.
having 3 positions, even though it's $265,000, it's a cliff, but it's not a cliff like it could have been. And we didn't want to do that at all, but when the budget didn't hit the number, that's when discussions with our subcommittee of the board said, just put the positions in.
Do you have another question or?
No, it's clear, I just was thinking in terms of not having to eliminate the positions, but we had them before.
Yeah, I think in comparison to other districts, we did do a good job at not making that funding cliff, and that was really intentional every step of the way.
Yeah,
I think other districts are in
I understand.
a different position right now, so. Or no?
Yes.
Okay.
So when we get the elementary principals up, they'll just brief.
All right,
They're all
so-
tied into one presentation. The presentation's 26 slides.
Okay, so we're gonna move on. So if there's no questions, let's move on
Dave
to.
Franco's gonna go next though with because he has a game to get to.
Okay, so we're gonna do the elementary school principals and the athletic.
No, we're gonna do athletics next, if that's okay.
Oh, so athletics. Okay,
Dave?
Dave, you can come forward.
I know you got a basketball game you wanna get to. Nick will load it on there, you'll be able to advance it right here.
I'm just gonna run to the restroom real quick while he starts and get a water.
Want me to have him
Bring
start?
waters
No.
out for
Yeah,
everyone?
I'll get, I'll get the waters.
Okay, I'm gonna run to the bathroom.
You want to start, Julie, or no?
What?
You want to start without you or no?
Yes, start without me.
Dave, go ahead and start.
No, I have to sit down, but what if I do? No.
Nick will sit.
So I couldn't. And then leave 15 minutes.
Who's this for?
No.
Should I go now, or should I wait until, are you guys okay if I go now?
Go now.
All right.
Executive decision, go for it.
First and foremost, thank you for your time and effort. I know it's a lot of hours volunteering for our school community, but I just want to thank you on behalf of myself and my 2 boys that attend here as well. I just got a couple of quick main points in terms of how I developed my portion of the budget. It's kind of ground up, basically asking the coaches what is a what are necessities, excuse me, and then what are some extras in terms of what we can do and provide for our student athletes. But the main purpose of our budget is to maintain what we already have. That's first and foremost to compete at state levels and within the CCC and guidelines by the CIAC. There's been a huge increase. I'm also sort of undertaking some extracurricular activities. We've had Ultimate Frisbee, weightlifting club, some volleyball programs at the middle school, and also some volleyball for boys at the high school as well. So taking a look into the best needs for all of those individuals. And we've had a huge increase in my last 4 years here with Unified program. Can highlight a couple of games that we've had that have been great. We've had the Unified team come to both soccer games, both female and men's soccer games. They played a game with Plainville in between. We went to Plainville this past couple weeks, having a basketball match right after our varsity, after our JV match, before our varsity match. Trying to explore different opportunities and avenues for our Unified team. But we have some things lined up again later on this winter and hopefully in the spring as well. But the number of participants have grown exponentially. We've added probably about 10 to 15 kids, student athletes, helping out with the Unified Sports Program this particular year. Providing a safe and secure environment for all of our students, obviously. And the big thing, especially after COVID, I know it's a big word and a big idea out there, and it's still being used, but the mental and social support for all of our student athletes is by far extremely important. So I always want to include that. And then last and certainly not least, continue to support athletic programs using this priority system I was mentioning before. It's kind of the necessities first, and then things that we need to compete, and then extras. And to be honest, moving forward in the next slide, these are the totals that I have. We don't have many extras. The big number that you see right there is the $42,000. This money is included particular items listed right there: first aid, sports award, and non-instructional supplies. Considering the budget constraints that we had last year, I've added all of those with the same dollar amount from last year. So about $23,000 of that 42 was money that I did not have this particular year. I've used various other accounts in my athletics account, my enterprise account, to fulfill the needs of those particular line items in my budget. We have a slight increase in transportation, 3%, and then contracted medical services, $2,000 for the year, which has increased over the course of the last 3 years because now it's a full-time trainer, and across the state, medical personnel has increased. So this is kind of something that's not just happening in Berlin with select therapy, but across the entire state. And we're fortunate enough to have Adrian, our trainer. There are many school districts that are calling me to borrow Adrian because they don't have a trainer. So she is unbelievable with the student athletes at the school. The other part of that $42,000, the $20,000 increase, is uniform rotation. We have 2 teams on uniform rotation, and then simply cost of balls. A box of baseballs last year versus this year is up $35. Basketball from last year to this year, it's up $25. I can go through the specifics, but the cost of expendable items that we use on a routinely daily basis has increased exponentially. Even in trying to buy in bulk, the prices are still very high. I think myself, along with Mr. Kirk, who's my assistant, he's at the game right now, we do a pretty good job allocating all our funds equitably for all our sports programs. Boys, girls, the big-time sports that you hear about, and some of the sports that maybe don't get a lot of coverage. So I think we do a really good job dispersing all of our funds. And then last but not least, McGee, our overall budget is up $6,800, well, $6,837, and that primarily is a slight increase in transportation, 3%. Usually the budget for transportation for McGee, we don't have as many programs, it's around $10,000. And then uniform replacement is the biggest thing. Sometimes some of the equipment and supplies that we buy in bulk I can give to McGee, so I try to wheel and deal as best I can with the distributors that I have, so everybody can get new balls, new baseballs, and of the like. But we do have a uniform replacement for 2 particular sports teams for next year that are on the docket list. So overall in the budget, although those numbers look a little high for the high school, I'm kind of trying to get back to where things were with the last budget cycle previously regarding the $42,000. That's all. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. If you guys have any questions or comments specifically to those numbers, yes.
So you said you're $20,000 short from where you were last year, and you took it from, what did you say? Another
Athletics
fund?
Enterprise Account.
Okay, so what is that?
It's a school-funded account where when we collect money for tickets, we're able to use that money for sports-specific things. So we've just used that money to supplement the lost money here, and I'm able to, knock on wood, I've been able to do okay with that account right now.
Okay, so it's kind of like a safety net in a sense? I mean, it's revenue that you get from games, et cetera,
Correct.
So you used it to offset what you didn't have. So you did that because you're a nice guy, or because you can do it, or?
No, we needed to make sure that sports awards and
Right.
first aid, all that stuff has to transpire. So even like some of the non-instructional aids, like one of the non-instructional items that we use is the huddle system. It's a camera system, video footage that kids can use for making college recruiting tapes. So what I did was to take a look at all the accounts and what we had, where we were. Now, granted, when COVID occurred, I was able to use a lot of the funds to purchase X amount of items that we didn't necessarily need.
Right.
So that money has kind of rolled over, but now it's kind of drying up a little bit. So that's why I put this back in here as well. So the huddle system, for example, it's about a $10,000 price tag, and I was able to take money from my enterprise account and also take money from various sports because they didn't need as much equipment to utilize that money as best as possible so we can have that huddle system.
So what you're saying is that enterprise account can be used for other things other than offsetting,
Sports related, I've had to use that.
right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, what would happen to it? It would just sit there in accrue, or I'm just trying to understand.
What would
Someone might
happen?
ask, what is he doing with that money?
Yeah.
Just trying to think of a citizen's question.
Yeah, if we didn't have this particular money in the not in the enterprise account, but in here, we'd have to take money out of the equipment funds to pay for first aid, sports awards, non-instructional. So I'd have to take more money than I'm taking already from all of the sports combined to try to supplement the cost for first aid, sports awards, and so forth. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Ryan, did you want to, I'm sorry, I wasn't.
I
ignoring
just
you.
was gonna
just
share and looking
trying
at,
to process.
looking at the athletic budget and the various accounts that Dave has.
Yeah.
And I give credit to Ashley looking at it. Last year, we discussed how we could offset, just like the high school, we were able to use, a different account to pay for graduation that we don't have funds in to pay for it this year, so now it's an operational. Well, we had a tight budget, we could take monies from other places that athletics had because the account was built up over time, and then use it to offset and not pay for what typically would be in a line item here, which is what he's putting back in.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Elementary principals.
Elementary principals,
They come up
did
all
that
three
also
together.
include that?
That's the district non-instructional programs, and there might be some others, but we'll ask Dave Rosesta.
Okay. All right, welcome.
Greetings, everyone. We appreciate the opportunity to have a little cameo appearance here. We will not be up here long at all. So in an effort to be exceedingly brief, my two colleagues will talk about two aspects of the budget that will impact elementary school.
Here we go. So, over the last few years, there has been a zero increase in our operational budgets at the elementary level. So based on, to account for inflation and just maintain our operational pieces now, components now, supplies, resources, each of us has requested a slight increase to this account.
And Mr. Benigni said it perfectly before. We are holding one elementary position, classroom teaching position, to account for enrollment. We want to keep it manageable, so we've asked for that between schools.
That's the meat and potatoes of it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your appearance and your explanation. Now we'll go to secondary principals budget presentation.
We'll be equally as brief as our elementary colleagues.
Be a little bit longer.
Okay, so just real quick, when we're talking about the operational budget, first of all, I think the presentation was probably the most explicit that I've seen in the last 15 years, so it's really well done. Good job. So it's easy to understand, in my opinion. But when we talk about the operational budget, really our authority is really over 5 lines: instructional supplies, which would be anything supportive of providing, learning. We're talking about paper, like lined, charted, construction, sticky notes. These are the things we're talking about, glassware, ebooks, and the non-instructional supplies would be items that you would typically organize. So it could be shelving, it could be laminating, cutting, writing utensils, those items. The textbooks, the maintenance and repair. In our school, we're talking about in the wellness center, perhaps, some of the equipment that's up there, the treadmills, the rowers, the kiln in the art room, and of course the software and technology. So that's really what we have authority over. So at McGee, we've been at 0 for the last 4 years. So in order to be proportionate with compared to the elementary schools, we're looking at $75 increase per pupil spending, and that's for instructional supplies or operational budget. And then we're not requesting any positions.
And at the high school, so we have a slight increase in the following areas. We're simply looking for additional funds for textbooks. This would include our online subscriptions, replacing current texts that are in place, yearly codes, which would include our online texts, so not physical texts, but more for subscriptions that we have in various content areas. As Mr. Benigni noted, the increased graduation cost. Of note for next school year, we have almost 50 more students in the graduating class, which matters for the class of 2025. All other areas will remain flat. In the business department, we do have a slight increase, and that they're up for their ICEV subscription. This is their online curriculum. In simulation, it's about $8,600 in total cost, and that will support introduction to business, the 2.5 classes that we currently have, 1.5 class for our accounting and finance, and then the other 0.5 class for business management. In addition, thank you. Again, as mentioned, for next school year, we are requesting 2.0 FTE. So Mr. Benigni already explained that we currently hired the math teacher to support a teacher who's currently on medical leave. We would like to keep that position into next school year. Also to support class sizes in the math department. Looking at our master course list, as of most recently in the math department, we currently have 12 classes at max or over enrollment. So depending on the course, that may mean 24 students, that may mean 27 students. And if you visited some of the math classrooms at Berlin High School, it's very tight. And more importantly, student to teacher ratio, that's not effective. So we certainly need the FTE there for math. The same goes for science. So we currently have 11 classes at max capacity. We cannot over-enroll in science due to codes and safety violations. So again, thinking about equitable opportunities, offering more opportunities for more students to get in various classes that they would like, we certainly could use the FTE. We lost FTE in math and science during the 22-23 school year. We just did not fill the 2 spots due to a retirement and a resignation, so we are looking to reinstate those positions. We also, as Mr. Benigni shared, have applied a part-time clerical position to the front office at Berlin High School in my short time as a principal, but my longer time as an assistant principal. I spent a lot of time working with our office assistants, and we certainly could use the support between bookkeeping responsibilities, attendance sub-assignments, preparing materials, coverage, the list goes on and on. That's just scratching the surface. So We certainly need that to support all areas of the building. And then lastly, the increase in graduation cost and fees. So again, as noted, we currently were funding the graduation through our accountabilities line item, but that does not get repleted. So it's repleted. It does not get renewed, so we need a new line item. We anticipated this, so again, with increased graduation fees to continue having our beautiful graduation at Sage Park, we have accounted for that in our budget requests.
Are there any questions?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We will have Lori Sharpen come forward with the curriculum and instruction budget presentation. Thank you.
So this slide just describes how the curriculum and instruction budget is used. It's used primarily for things with outside of what happens at the Board of Ed. Right, so any curriculum additions that happen, new courses, we have to write curriculum for, any revisions and updates that we talk about, that's all part of what comes out of this budget. Learning and new materials that might be part of a state mandate that has come. We talked a little bit about that the last meeting. Purchasing materials for new courses. The first time it's paid out of the curriculum and instruction budget, and then it's taken over by the schools. Any professional learning for any staff, both in district and out of district, comes out of this budget. And then software subscriptions for teaching and learning are part of this budget. So we just go through and itemize what's in all of these pieces. So instructional supplies, we have ESOL supplies, classroom support materials, supplies that we have to purchase for summer reading, books that we have to purchase for summer reading. Other professional services, we have elementary author visits at each of the elementary schools, and we also have to support adult education, even though it's not part of, it's not held physically in Berlin, we still have to buy that service from another district, Wallingford. Our other certified salaries, that's for curriculum writing. So we talked about how fortunate we are just a few meetings ago that we have teachers that are very interested in maintaining their curriculum writing, and so they do that during the summer months. And we are lucky that we have teachers that want to present to their colleagues some things that they've learned and want to share that. And so we are able to compensate them for that as well. The superintendent talked about our teaching and learning software being a big driver this time around, and that's really because of where we are as far as all of our 3-year contracts, if we were able to get them as we were moving forward. In District PD, we've been fortunate that we've had some great people come in to do literacy. There's certainly a lot related to the state legislation moving forward. We've had math, we've had consultants with CTE and consultants with other departments come in, Heidi Hayes-Jacobs. I mean, we are very fortunate that we have people that are respected by our staff members being able to come in and help us make changes as we move forward. Out of district PD, librarians obviously are learning constantly about new books. That changes every Tuesday. Teacher leaders, department PD. So teacher leaders are really any teacher who's leading change. So it could be a 4-3 teacher who's doing something with literacy, and so they need to go out and get information and bring it back. Anytime a new teacher at the high school is teaching an AP course, they have to go out and get trained for that AP course. We have a lot of administrators and our data department who are working on their Power School training. So all of that has to happen, and we have to find funding for it. Staff travel is just movement between buildings for various staff members. It might be shared staff, like an art teacher. curriculum and instruction, non-instructional supplies, so that's just for when we have meetings, we have to have supplies, so it might be chart paper and markers and anything that might be needed in order to do that. Our administrative supplies, so we have professional learning and curriculum updates, sometimes it's new books. We have to fund the art around town. We have a art department that is very supportive of getting kids' work out into the community, so we have to buy the frames in order to do that. We pay for our district art show, our kindergarten orientation and welcome, our kindergarten assessment, the state legislation, that will come out of here as we move forward. Textbooks, again, for new courses, comes out of curriculum and instructions. These included updated AP text, pilots, so we may have to do some pilot work with our reading, so that may come out of here. Tuition, we have some students who take advanced math courses, and so they might have an independent study, so they might be taking multivariable calc, and so they'll work with teacher and get that information with that teacher, so we have to pay tuition through colleges in order to make that happen. And then we also have our CNA registration for kids. Dues and fees, field trips, so we have kids, we pay for the transition trips, so kids going up to middle school, when they go to the musicals, from the middle to high, from the elementary to middle, elementary to high, all of those types of things that we do. We also pay for in-district or in-school. Learning about Berlin, they come into our schools. We work very closely with our Berlin Historical Society, but we also go to the Peck Library for field trips as well in second grade, so lots of different things to get our kids learning. And that's where we are. Questions? Thank you.
If I could just make one else. So, as I said to you, what you're receiving tonight are presentations from each of the departments. In your budget book, you have all the line items that are color-coded, matched to that budget summary, if you want to see the breakdown of what's being spoken of. Okay, so, and that was an effort to be clearer about what do these numbers mean, and you have the numbers also.
All right, we'll turn it over to our special education budget.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome Brian and Jen, too, to the Board of Ed. I'm Linda Holy, and I'm the Director of Special Ed, and this is Michelle, one of our supervisors. So we're here to share with you a little bit about the special education budget. As Brian said, the special education budget is a big part of our overall budget. The purpose of this budget is to support the learning and social-emotional needs of students with an individual education plan, an IEP, from ages 3 to 22. This looks at certified and non-certified salaries and benefits, instructional supplies, contracted services, equipment. A big line item is tuition and transportation, Central Connecticut Transition Academy, and our extended school year, which is our summer school. You know, the special ed budget is really a moving target. It's very difficult to plan for. I think the only predictable part of the special ed budget is probably certified salaries and benefits, because one student can move in or one student can move out, and that could mean tuition, that could mean a paraprofessional, that could mean one-to-one nursing services. So it's so unpredictable because we just never know, depending on what happens today could be very different tomorrow if a new student or family moves into our town or moves out. Usually they're coming in and they're not leaving. But that makes it very difficult to plan for a special education budget. Some of this, I also think it's important for you to know that some of the services and contracted services just aren't for special education students. Interpreters, I'll get into it after, but like interpreters. I signed a bill today for interpreters. We have Arabic, Polish, Italian, Russian, and those are for any families for a parent-teacher conference, for a 504 meeting, for a PPT, just for a parent meeting that may need translation services. So they can, you know, participate effectively in the meetings with our staff. You already saw this in Brian's slide, but again, this shows how much of the special education budget is part of the overall budget. This is just our overall October 1 data. So in the district, as of October 1, we had 404 students identified with special education needs. Out of district placements at that time were 21. You'll see in our next slide when I talk about tuitions, it says 20. That's because we have a student that participates in our choice program. That's the additional 1 in here. When we talk about the tuition, that's not included because Hartford does reimburse us for that tuition. Magnet or VOAG students are in here. Again, that's some of those students may be general ed students. They may not be special ed. Service plan students are students that attend St. Paul's and need special education service, so we have to provide tutoring services to them. And then we do keep track of students that, again, gen ed students, special ed students that may have been hospitalized, that may have been in a detention facility, or who are ill and need homebound tutoring. This is a new slide. We didn't have this in there last year, but I think it's important to share because, like Brian shared with you, we ended up hiring a new BLAST teacher at our elementary level this year in December because our numbers have gone up. Students have moved into our districts with significant needs. Many of the students in our elementary BLAST program need one-to-one paras for safety concerns and for learning. A lot of these students are still learning how to use the bathroom. They're not independent in the bathroom. They have assistive technology devices to communicate their needs. So that one teacher, I'll just throw out a number, $60,000 to outplace one of those students in our BLAST program could be anywhere from $80,000 to $200,000. So this just kind of breaks down any of the unique programs we have in our district. The BLAST students are more for our students with significant intellectual disabilities or physical needs or autism. A lot of the students are nonverbal. And the RISE program is the one at the high school, again, with those students. The SNAP and SOAR program are more of those students that have social emotional needs, and they just need extra support. ESS is the Effective School Solutions program at McGee in the high school, and that's really high intense clinical needs. Their caseloads are only 10 students each because these clinicians may be going out to the house on a weekly basis to try to get the kids into school. They're getting individual counseling once a week, probably check-ins every day. They're getting group therapy every day. At the high school, it's a credit earned. And there's a family component and there's a family support group. And then our Central Connecticut Transition Academy is the program for our students 18 to 22. A big part of the special ed budget is the contracted services. ESS is in there. Outside evaluators, if a student needs a psychiatric eval, our psychiatric evals right now are running $5,000 an eval. If they need a neuropsychological eval, it's about $2,800. As I shared with you, the interpreter services. ESY is for summer school. We have to supply a nurse during our summer school programs. Some of our students need one-on-one nursing just because of their needs. We have many students that have a hearing impairment, so we contract with an outside agency to provide services for them. And legal fees, assistive technology. Just like all the schools, we have supplies specific to our special ed teachers, our occupational therapists, our physical therapists, our school counselors, our psychologists, our social workers. And then there's a special line item for equipment for adaptive seating for students with physical and motor needs. A big driver of our budget is the special ed tuition. Right now, we currently have 20 students, which is, I think last year we had 24 or 26. So our numbers have been going down. Some students have graduated. Some students have come to our transition academy. And some students were just able to bring back to program because of the programs we have. But the tuitions range anywhere from $79,000 to almost $300,000. And then transportation is in addition to that, what could be anywhere from $18,000 to $72,000 just to get the kids to and from their schools. As Brian said, we have 2 unanticipated tuitions, but I can tell you they're no longer unanticipated. We already have students identified that we're looking to actually outplace this current school year. The magnet schools aren't just for special ed students. Some of the students may have special education, some are gen ed, but right now we have 5 students currently attending magnet schools, and that number has gone down too over the years. And again, it's because of the programs, I think, at Berlin High School that we're continuing to offer, that students are coming back to district, which is nice. And that's just our overall tuition line item. As Brian shared too, with excess costs, we do get some money, but there's an excess cost grant from the state. When this grant was put into place years and years and years ago, they would reimburse us 100% back. Right now, we're looking at 80%. So any student's tuition that is 4.5 times over the per pupil cost, which our per pupil cost is about $20,600. So any tuition over $93,000, we will get some money back from the state through the excess cost grant. This is the first year we don't have paraprofessionals on there. I think we're all set right now, unless a student moves in. I know, and we're fully staffed for once. But the 2 items up there, the blast teacher, like I said, at the elementary that we actually have already hired, and then the 2 not unanticipated anymore, they're anticipated tuitions for our students that need to be outplaced. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Can you just clarify the excess cost again? So basically, if the student is 4.5 times, the tuition if they go out, placement, roughly $93,000, the 80% reimbursement we get is based off of what their tuition is. We're paying as long as it's in excess of 93, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's a combination of the transportation and the tuition.
All right.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you. That was very clear. I appreciate that. All right, moving on to site and building. Ashley.
Hello. So these slides are very similar to what you saw in October when we had to approve the site and building and the capital for the capital planning committee. So just to recap, in October of 23, I met with all the building principals and the facilities director to discuss building maintenance and desired facility projects. Requests come in based on various categories like building fixtures, construction or minor renovation, general site maintenance, and building equipment. Projects are vetted collaboratively with the facilities department and prioritized based on student need and safety. So these are just a handful of projects. It's important to remember that these are not in the superintendent's budget. These go to the facilities department in their 61 account, and then also to the capital committee. And I just don't want you to assume that the 61 account is only these requests. It's also whatever they have just for routine maintenance. So we kind of check these boxes whenever we can. So for the high school, we have about $165,000 worth of requests. Will the high school get $165,000? Probably not, but whenever we can, we will chip off. Instead of maybe 6 entries, maybe we only get 2. And we prioritize that as the need continues. And for Griswold's, they have a handful of different construction, equipment requests, and building renovations. We don't have any budget estimates for Griswold quite yet, so as those come in, we'll update these charts. Hubbard, we have about $150,000 worth of site and building requests. McGee, it's about $170,000. And then Willard, 30,000 plus once we start getting some hard costs for some of the other things that she put in for site and maintenance and construction. And then our security department has about 59,000 worth of requests in for the 61 capital accounts. So for capital projects, again, we prioritized a handful of projects. Our goal was to kind of have a laser focus on what we're submitting upstairs in hopes to secure as much funding as we possibly can from the capital committee. As you've seen through several different board meetings, Mr. Kugno has presented the renovation of the 5 science classrooms over at the middle school, which is in excess of $3.1 million. I believe the next step is the referral to the PBC, so should see some movement on that moving forward. Then there's a library renovation over at Hubbard. We're still getting some hard costs for that. Hopefully we'd like to see that move forward. And then the fire suppression systems for the network closets over at over at BHS. Essentially what that is our network gear is protected right now by a sprinkler system. So if there were ever to be some kind of catastrophe in any of those network closets, the entire network would go down because water and technology doesn't really work. So suppression network or suppression gear is just a better, more effective way to reduce any kind of fire damage. And then of course our standard student transportation vehicles that we submit every year. It's just part of the maintenance cycle. Outside of our priority projects, we have just other requests that were brought in throughout the district. If there's ever any extra money, these are just some of the other projects that we would like to move forward. So the building numbering system over at BHS, ceiling tile replacement over at Hubbard, and another one of Sal's major projects is the auditorium renovation. That's all I have. Questions?
It used to be that we would produce a 5-year plan. The 5-year plan is really not the best way the town has shifted. So as Ashley said, that laser focus, the thought is if we give clear guidelines of where our focus is, the likelihood of those being addressed. As you can see, when you go into some of the buildings like the lockers at McGee, or the painting of the doors, the auditorium seating, there's as many broken seats at McGee. Those are things that have to happen outside of the operational budget, and it needs town approval. So the message is to get those out front and to keep them on the list as they are a priority.
Are there any other questions for Ashley or Brian about the capital requests or the site and building?
Before Ashley goes.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask the question so they can answer the question for you, because I think it's going to be brought up. Can you explain, because I think the question is, one of the questions that probably will come up is, we hired these positions this current fiscal year. How did we do that with the budget that we have in place? So I'm going to let you answer. So why do we have additional funding that allowed us to hire the blast teacher, to hire the part-time clerical, to hire the math person? Because we've talked about it, positions that are open, that haven't been filled, but please, I'll let you, probably can explain it better than I can.
We have had tremendous amount of flexibility in our staffing lines this year. We've had people resign late. We have had some staff, if they were a top step person, they have been replaced with a lower step person. We've had a lot of vacancies in our paraprofessionals, but thank God we are, I believe Linda said we're 100% now. So with that, we get some flexibility or some surplus, as they like to call it, that gives us some opportunities to put positions that were eliminated or funding that was eliminated for positions back into the budget.
So just to be clear, when Cindy Martin retired, we received that one late, and then we brought in her replacement, who was a newer administrator. So there was probably a surplus there.
Yes. So when Cindy retired, we hired Jenna, and we also adjust that position from a 12-month position to a 10-month position for this school year only. So with that, we had some savings from Cindy to Jenna. So
And
yes,
that wasn't
stuff like that.
anticipated last year when we went through the budget, because we had no idea that she was even
Right, but
retiring.
it's also sometimes there's a gap between hiring the person, so if Cindy left And typically it's 30 days or more for someone to be released. So now we're not paying someone in their position, so others are filling in for that position, which allows for additional funding to be there.
Another example is when the Dean of Students, when Danielle Selena transitioned from Library Media Center to the Dean of Students, her position was essentially vacant for about a month and a half because that superintendent didn't allow that person to come until they fulfilled their 30-day contractual obligation. So there was, we were only paying one library media specialist even though we had two positions open and funded. So it's stuff like that, and that happened with a handful of certified positions.
And then that's totally unanticipated as we go through the budget season and plan, so, okay. Any questions relating to that before we just go to general questions?
Essentially, it's regarding the timing of when people are being hired and leaving, resigning, et cetera, that will determine how the books look to others outside of this sort of industry. To say, well, you have money there, why are you saying X, Y, and Z? Okay, so it's really timing.
Yeah, I wish that we could get to be honest with you, there's a theory out there, as soon as you set a budget, it's wrong, because there are just so many changes and flexibility like that happen throughout a fiscal year. So ideally, we would like our retirements and our resignations to be done before we close the book and actually establish the number for the town, but reality is people's lives change. Sometimes an opportunity opens up in another district closer to home, and that's just the nature of the beast, I guess. And we see a lot of that now, considering that we're seeing a lot more vacancies kind of pop up because districts are hiring, and you'll see a lot of people there's just one little thing that district offers that Berlin doesn't, that will make them jump.
Thank you.
I'm gonna open it up to general questions. All right, any general questions, comments? Thank you for everything, everyone who's here tonight, and your presentation, Brian, Ashley, for preparing all of this. I thought the overview was very, very comprehensive and easy to comprehend. So I'll open it up to you guys and see if you guys have anything you want to add or ask. Okay.
Can I make a statement?
Yeah, of course.
I just want to thank the staff that's in front of you because it was really a collaborative effort. I mean, Ashley did a yeoman's work on this, so thank you, Ashley. But thank you everyone that's here because we all spent time talking about it and, countless hours putting it together in what we hope is a very efficient and clean format for you to comprehend with the numbers on one packet and then the overview on the other. So we hope that works for you and the public. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have our budget workshop in 2 weeks on January 22nd, and that is where we will come together with our questions. If you have questions before the workshop, I just recommend sending them to myself, and then I will forward them off to Brian if you guys could get those to me by next Monday, the 15th at the latest. That way I can get them over to Brian and his team so we have answers for the 22nd. We love when you guys ask questions, so no question is too small, and go ahead and make your list as long as you want. We encourage that, and this is an opportunity for us to dive deep. So if you guys could get your questions prepared by next Monday, the 15th, and then send them directly to me, I'll make sure they get to Brian. We'll go over them before the next meeting, and then we'll have answers for all of you. So mark your calendars for that. Also in the binder, if you open it up, I believe on the page 6, it has an overview of our budget schedule and the meeting dates. So I'd recommend just going in and putting those in your calendar, especially the weather date on January 24th. I think the budget is probably the biggest part of what we do during the year. It takes up the most time. So we have officially kicked this off. So thank you to everyone who put in a lot of time and effort preparing this. So We have one more agenda item, our consent agenda. Do we have a motion for consideration?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do we have a second? So the motion by Willis, second by Gina? Okay. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 7-0. And then we have one more item. Do we have a motion to adjourn? So motion by Melissa, second by Peter, assuming any discussion? No. All those in favor? Opposed? 7-0. The meeting is now adjourned at 8:03 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for all the work you put into this.